what's driving me is, be able to live comfortably and not worry about, how I'm going to pay the rent or the gas or the food, and, continue what I'm doing.
I'd like to welcome everybody back to another episode of the Reptile Studio podcast with myself, Brian from Hudson Valley Reptile and Rescue, and
Greg
from
Reptile Studio on Instagram.
And I'm Armen, known as Herp Time on all my social media.
Excellent. And I like when the guests introduce themselves. That's even better. He's got it. He knows what he's doing. This is great. We're going to breeze through this one. No, hopefully not. The longer the podcast, the more fun we have. So Greg was telling me that you do a lot with smaller creatures. I'm not on Instagram all that much. So I really am kind of shooting in the dark here on what you do. You want to talk about yourself for a minute or two, and we'll go from there?
Yeah. So what I mainly do now is majority of, everything in this room that you see, all these cages are all different species of anoles.
Wow.
So yeah, there's over 400 species of anoles, and I have around not even 10% of that, which is still a ton. So I do lots of anoles. I do smaller, like micro geckos, dwarf monitors, few, odds and ends here and there, but that's the majority of what I do. I've been breeding them for a couple years now. Before that, I was breeding other lizards like Abronia and, leopard geckos and crested geckos and all that sort of, stuff. So I've always been into reptiles, snakes as well, but the breeding, I've always been on the lizard side. And that's about the short summary, I guess.
What dwarf monitor species do you work with?
Mainly just Varanus kingorum, the King's Dwarf Rock Monitor. So produced a few of those this year, and
that's awesome. Congratulations. Yeah. They're very few and far between, I hear.
Yeah, they're super. They're probably the best pet monitor. I mean, Ackies are great if you want something more handleable, but size wise, kingorum are just, put them in an exoterra and call it a day for a pair, and just they'll pump out some eggs, and they're pretty fun. They're not the longest lived monitor. I mean, smaller species generally don't live as long as larger stuff, but they're still they're super cool lizard to watch, and they're super intelligent for such a small package.
Yeah, I love the room you're in too.
Thank you. So yeah, this all used to be like a mixed match of exoterra, zoom eds, some other random like Chinese brands of similar glass enclosures. And then I just did the switch to these. The brand is called Herp Cult, and these are all acrylic enclosures. And they're a little smaller footprint wise, but they're just about as tall height wise. So for my arboreal species of lizards, it gives them what they need, because they don't use they're really never on the ground except to lay eggs. So as long as they have the arboreal area, that's all they really care about. So with these, I was able to fit much more enclosures, so I have all my adult pairs, and I have a lot of holdbacks that I'm trying to grow out, because a lot of these things people don't have. So I want to kind of line breed them and get the prettiest ones, and keep back a lot of the ones I produce, so I can continue that. Before I started doing this, a lot of people, majority, didn't even think twice about anoles. You thought about the green anole, the brown anole. Now it's about it. What you see at Pets for $5-8. But now that I've been doing this, it's really opened eyes to a lot of people, and a lot of more people are getting into, just as day geckos or dart frogs are beautiful display animals. These are just the same. They're awesome to watch. You can build a beautiful terrarium for them, and so that's what I'm focusing on now. And yeah, I really like these Herp Cults. I've actually helping them out with some of their video stuff, and going to start selling them as well. So they really work well for me, and they're pretty sleek looking too.
Yeah, the room does look pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
I think that room is a goal for a lot of keepers, something uniform in all brand or all shape or all colors, or it looks really nice. Nice background.
Yeah, I like, keeping things uniform. Also, this way I have lots of branches and stuff for them to climb on, and they can hide behind them and stuff, but in the same kind of sense, it's not totally overplanted, so that I can still, check on the animals, make sure everything's running. Because it's not like I have one pair by my bedside where I just build a terrarium. Oops, sorry for that. I have one pair by my bedside, and just see them every now and then. No, I want to make sure everything's doing good. If there's a problem, I want to address it immediately. So this way, it's not like totally sterile like a snake rack where it's just paper and a water bowl, but they still have what they need. They still have some enrichment, enjoy what they're living in, but I can still, get a visual on them, see what's going on, make sure everything's going well.
Yeah. See, and I love that too, because it's what you're doing is for me is like perfectly kind of bridges the gap between like the rack system or the tubs, the stacks of the like Target tubs,
right?
To where like everything could be accessible and easy to maintain and monitor the species, but also be beautiful and have, everything that they need, and more. Honestly, I mean, what they have is a lot in the wild. They have a real lot, but that's way more than they actually need.
Right, exactly.
So to see, what you're doing there it's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. So when you take out the predators from the wild, they don't need, all that cover. And when they get used to me, they're not always hiding. They're out a lot more. So naturally, they're not as inclined to hide. So they don't need all that huge hiding area. A lot of people think, you want to, in a lot of cases with wild animals and more shy species, it's true where you want to give them more cover because they will use it because they are more nervous. But these lizards, I mean, anyone who's lived in Florida knows, you have anoles in your backyard, you start feeding them or start walking around, they'll start coming up to you. So they're really not naturally shy if you give them the opportunity to trust you. So that's why, I mean, it wouldn't work for all species of lizards, but this works really well. And I essentially have created a rack system. It just, it's a little prettier and more room for the animals. Of course, I'm nothing against rack systems because without them, there's no way we'd have all the morphs of stuff we have and all that stuff. But this is just my kind of personal way of bridging, like you said, bridging the gap of, having something more visually pleasing, giving the lizards everything they need, happy enough to breed. So that's the formula I've come up with.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely looks good.
Thank you.
The so out of the groups, you keep adults together and in pairs, and then you have offspring singly, or how does that work?
So what I do is I have either pairs or trios in these enclosures, and then I used to keep babies individually, but then I ran out of space because anoles ideally are laying a single egg every 7 to 10 days. So you imagine each female, you have a trio, you're going to get almost 10 babies out of there a month. Right. So I was keeping them individually. Then I ran into this scenario where, oh my gosh, I am running, because I used to keep them in like, maybe there were jars that were about 10 inches tall, 4 inches round, and they had a screen lid. But then I quickly realized I was running out of space. So I started keeping babies together and separating based on size, because as long as they're around the same size, they won't bully each other. But once they reach a size where one is bigger than the other, then you can run into issues. Gotcha. But I've kind of solved that problem by every week or two, I'll separate whoever is growing a little more than the other or who is older than the other. So I keep, maybe it depends, between 5 to 10 babies per one of these enclosures, and it works out well that way.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Yeah. It's always nice to be able to have something, that when they can interact with each other, it's a lot more. We take in, I run Hudson Valley Reptile and Rescue, and we take in a lot of pet reptiles, but one of the most common things that we actually take in are anoles. I get a phone call and people are like, well, I bought this plant and all of a sudden I have a lizard in my house. And, it's typically been Bahamans over the last several years, but originally it was greens and, any other smaller lizard from Mediterranean house geckos have come as well. But it was just one of those things where, I just kind of keep them all communally as long as they're fairly similar in size. And I was very curious how you did it. And you have very good breeding success across all of your species. Is it targeted? Are there very differences between them? Is there...
Well, basically all the species except some odds and ends are Caribbean species, so they all come from islands in the Caribbean. Okay. So the care is all very similar because those islands all have very similar climate. So This room is about 80 to 82 degrees at any given point right now. And then these T5 grow lights all plug into each other, which is convenient, but they all have two T5 5.0 UV lights, which the grow lights and the fact that they're T5s create enough heat so that at the top of the enclosures, it's almost hitting 100 degrees.
Okay.
And then once it gets near the bottom, also where the lay box is, it's back to that 82, 84-ish. So that's the good gradient, like you'd imagine on a Caribbean island you
Right.
find. And then, mist, they got, usually I had a misting system set up. I just set these up like a week ago. So I still have to install misting systems. So I've been hand misting every day, which is, it's kind of cool to go back to how I used to do it, hand misting, because it's another chance to, go look and see who's doing good, see how beautiful the animals are, check out who needs help or who doesn't,
Right.
who needs extra food or water that week. But it's, that's how it goes.
I don't even want to count behind you right now, but there's quite a few enclosures behind you. And I mean, it's on a right angle. So there's one wall and another wall covered. What do you have on hand for food for all of them? I'm assuming you breed your own insects, I would imagine.
I don't. I wish I did. I mean, the thing is, I've dabbled in breeding my own, but I can never keep up with what I need. And then at a point, it becomes a situation of the time it takes me to, produce all the insects becomes not worth my time.
Right.
So even though I go through about 40,000 crickets a week, I just came to the realization, well, there's no way I can produce that many a week.
Right.
I mean, the smaller babies will eat crickets that are 1 week old, which it's easy to hatch out pinheads and get them to 1 week. But when you need crickets that need to be 3 or 4 or 5 weeks old, like a large cricket, that's when you reach, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm good at keeping lizards alive. I'm not very good at keeping thousands of crickets, not to mention the smell. So I get crickets that I have to purchase crickets, and that's what I have to do. But it's a lot of overhead and expense. So when someone asks, oh, why is this lizard so much? Well, I mean,
absolutely.
You can get it from someone on Craigslist. I mean, you can't, not this, but for example, you have someone breeding day geckos on their bedside. It's a lot different than someone like me who has, thousands of square feet of lizards that spends, couple $1,000s in feeding them a month and all that stuff. So it gets
overhead is always the driving force behind price. And for what you do and what you have, price is not. They shouldn't even care about the price if they're already coming to you for that animal. I mean, just you're doing stuff that nobody else is really doing, I would imagine. I don't know specific species to ask you questions directly.
Right.
Anoles are not something that I have dabbled in myself, with the exception of keeping them alive when they are dropped off. But it's definitely an avenue of difference. You're very different. I'm sure you don't handle them, right? It's not an interactive pet for the most part.
No.
Yeah. And as far as it's a labor of love, I would imagine at this point, you're hands off. You're not getting any real physical touch and physical interaction with it, but you have at least 30 enclosures behind you on camera. And so that's at the very least 60 animals in the doubled ones. And that it's so, it's got to be an immense amount of work to go through and systematically check on all of them and do all of this diligent work for the purpose of continuing a species that isn't really being bred in captivity, right? I assume that's what most of the species you have aren't.
Yeah. So most of the species I'm the only one with in the United States. Majority of these have either been imported directly from the wild, or they came from other hobbyists in like European countries. They like a lot of the niche stuff. So that's where I'll get a lot of this stuff as well. But it's definitely a labor of love, like you said. I really just go off the things I go off of. Well, I enjoy seeing it every day in an enclosure enough to, want to keep producing them and take the time and effort. Like if I didn't sell any for a year and I'm stuck with this many, would I still enjoy having them? And the answer is usually yes, because I love them all. But, and then another one is, will this, pan out? Will people also like this? I might think it's cool because I know all the species, and there's this one subspecies that looks kind of different, but it's ugly, like brown. well, I think it's cool, but will others think it's cool? So I
Right.
also have to take that into consideration, because although it is my passion, it's my hobby, it's, what I love to do, I also, at the end of the day, have to pay an enormous amount of bills to keep it going.
Right.
So it's yeah, it's definitely a labor of love. And but I found that if I think it's a cool animal, there's others that will also agree. And other people, I used to be really into, I still am really into like fish tanks and stuff. Just as you can't handle a goldfish or a beta fish or anything,
Right.
it's the same with these. You still have a beautiful display animal that you can watch, interact with, just have in your living room to enjoy a nice evening. That's how I view these. They're just, you build a beautiful enclosure for them, and you get to enjoy watching them do their thing. If you have a pair, you get to watch them interact. Females interact with each other. So that's my take on it. And I think other people have really started to see that as well, especially with, not everyone lives in a lot of people live in apartments or smaller homes.
Right.
People can't, go out, spend a ton of money on a crazy morph. I try to keep everything I breed affordable as possible, because I was that kid that's messaging me on Instagram that wants a lizard. I was that kid, one time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to, just because of the price is way out of budget, I don't want to make it so he can't get the experience I did and then maybe do something like I'm doing one day. So like if someone asks me for like a $300 lizard, hey, it's a kid, hey, can I do a month payment plan on this? I'm like, yeah, no problem. Because does it make sense for me? Not really. I could have sold to someone else who would have paid outright, but it's more of, helping other people with the same interest, because without, the younger people or the people who are just getting into it, we can't keep this whole reptile thing going, and then it'll be gone for all of us.
Yeah.
So
and I mean, yep, go ahead, Greg. I'm sorry.
No, sorry. I was saying, so why at Knowles? Like what was it that?
I think I've always liked the more obscure things that no one has. I've always liked being a little, I don't know if it's ego or whatever. I like having stuff that is different than everyone else. So I used to breed a lot of Abronian stuff, and I ran into some issues with that. So my collection caught a virus, and then I lost a lot of them. And I decided, that was an issue. I lost a lot of money on that, and they produce very slowly. You're lucky if you get one litter a year. And on top of that, there's some issues with legality, because a lot of them didn't get to the United States legally. So I started branching out to other species and genuses and stuff like that. And I found I really enjoyed working with the Knowles. So I just kind of got deeper and deeper. And now that's kind of where I am. That's also where I show a bit on my Instagram, the micro geckos like Spherodactylus and Gonatodes. Those are similar to me, where I got some and then I was like, wow, this is actually really cool. And you dive in and there's so many species and subspecies and colors and pattern. And you can keep them in such a small, simple space that I was like, you know what, this also fits what I'm doing. The care is similar. Just dive into those as well. So I like stuff that is underappreciated, and I find satisfaction when I can have other people realize how cool they are. So whether it's an ego
I think
thing,
it's great.
Good, either way, I enjoy it. I enjoy sharing stuff that other people I think should appreciate.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think you're doing something that nobody else is really doing with an Knowles specifically. And I think that's a great step. And it's really kind of the origin story of a lot of the species here that we have in captivity is, somebody thought they were cool and somebody bred them. And it was somebody just like you that was like, oh, this is really awesome. I want you to see how awesome it is. And here we have a bearded dragon on every pet store shelf on the planet, and not to use that as I hope it doesn't equate to that, but you know what I mean in terms of importance and being incredible. Nowadays, it's really hard to find people keeping something that the majority of people don't keep. And I just, it's remarkable to see on the scale that you're doing it, and the directed, the intention, the intention behind it is your own personal passion, which is 100% the reason to do this, period. And it's just remarkable. You know, like you said a minute ago, it doesn't matter if you sell one baby an entire year, you'd still probably do it. You want to do it. It's a labor of love. Granted, I mean, financially, you probably have to at this point, but it's more of a point where you're emotionally tied and invested into this project. And that's where I think breeding reptiles has always come out of. And I think it's great to see someone do it on the scale that you're doing it with animals that nobody else has. It's remarkable to hear about. You know, I didn't even realize that there were that many species of anole to begin with. You know, and I've been doing this for a long time. But that's remarkable. Are there very many size differences between those species of anoles? Yeah.
So there's anoles that, you know, there's ones that are like a few inches long all the way to the largest are the Cuban Knights and those type of Cuban crown giant, they're called species.
Right.
Those get, you know, almost 2 feet long, including the tail. So it's a
now,
huge.
Those are the ones that have become popular over the last several years, probably 5 or 6 years, right?
The most popular anoles right now are basically the Cuban Knights, which the blue beauties are a subspecies. If you've seen those, like there, a lot of people are getting into those because they're just a bright blue and yellow lizard. It's like you can't even make that up. It's just an insane color combo.
It's like a little kid's picture.
Exactly.
they
you gave a little kid a coloring book and they chose the craziest colors. And then another species of anole, which a lot of people don't realize is anole, is the Cuban false chameleon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those have become really, really popular for good reason. They're honestly I think they're a better suited pet for someone than a bearded dragon because they take up less space. They have just as much personality. They're super fun. And they're just a really cool all-around lizard. So those get not even a foot long, and they just have the most dinosaur weird-looking features, huge head. And that's where there's tons of different species of anoles that fit in that category as well. Like it's called the Jamaican twig anole. It fits the same kind of niche in the wild as the Cuban false chameleon, because the Cuban false chameleon is a twig anole. That's why it's kind of more docile and slower moving. So the Jamaican twig anole has the same structure. It's a little more spread out, but it's about half the size. So that's another cool species. I've held back all the babies I produce. I probably have 40 right now because I have a bunch of pairs and I've held back, and I'm creating more unrelated pairs out of my other pairs so that I can, turn that into another, hopefully, staple of pet reptile that it's a cool anole, but you can also handle it. I know handling is something a lot of people want to do.
Right.
I don't, like I said, I'm into fish tanks. I'm into observation. So I don't need to handle an animal. It makes it cool if you can. It makes for a great video for my Instagram. But if I can't handle it, I'm not stressing. But a lot of people want to have a lizard they can hold. So that's one species of anole I've really kind of focused on, and I'm trying to have a good group going so that when the time comes, I'm like, hey, I want to share these I share them on social media, but when I want to share them with others and get them out there, I think only me and one other guy in the United States are really breeding them. So I want to show that these animals are more than just, fence lizards, feeder lizards. They have beauty and they have personalities, and they're really, really, honestly, they act with the intelligence of like a monitor. When you look at them, they look back at you. If they know you're going to feed them, they'll be ready to eat. So they're really cool. And yeah,
I was going to bring that up. So about is actually, I saw it today. I didn't see it originally, but for whatever reason, but I went on your Instagram again today, and it was like, it might have been the last reel that you posted was the water, what the hell was it?
The Chinese crocodile lizard?
No.
Or the vermiculatus, the Cuban stream anole?
Yes, the Cuban stream anole that you were feeding it a cricket.
Right.
And just the look that it had, like you were coming with the cricket, there was just like something going on in those eyes that reminded me of like a monitor.
Yeah.
Just like that, like you could see the processing going on.
For sure. Yeah. So that's the thing with these anoles, like I have ones like that where it's not like a crested gecko or a leopard gecko where it just kind of like and pounces. They're like thinking, and they'll be on the other side of the enclosure and run all the way up to you. That same lizard will jump on. Have a cricket here. He'll jump on my hand. He'll eat it. He'll look at me. He'll turn around and jump back. So it's like they have so much more intelligence than we give them credit for. Especially, I mean, even the green and brown anoles. We use that. Of course, I have had reptiles that also need to eat feeder lizards, and I've used them. But at the same time, they're so intelligent and so they're so capable of learning and understanding what's going on that I think they're super underappreciated for just the sheer the way they can act around us. But yeah, the Cuban stream anoles are just some of my favorites because they're also a larger species and they just look so prehistoric, crocodile-like, and they are very intelligent.
And they have the blue eye, right?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
It's strangely enough, a lot of anoles have blue eyes. It's really cool to see. So they have blue eyes, and then I have a few more species here that have blue eyes. But they have really when they fire up a bright green, like a kind of an army navy green pattern, and then when they fire down, they can be like completely black. So then their eyes really pop. A lot of people don't know that anoles. I mean, you've probably seen it with the green anoles, but they fire up and down really quickly. Like their color change can be more drastic than a chameleon or a crested gecko or anything. Like these anoles some of them are bright blue. You walk away and look back in 30 seconds and it's literally like dark brown and you can't even see it. So they are just overall such underrated and underappreciated animals for all the cool characteristics they have.
Do you have a favorite? I know it's a tough question.
I think my favorites are the Cuban stream anoles, just because I grew up watching Crocodile Hunter, and I've also always been a monitor guy. I mean, if I could, I would have tons of pairs of monitors, but that's why I stick to the King's Dwarf monitors so that I can have more in a smaller space. But the Cuban stream anole, I think, is that gap between anole, crocodile, monitor. They kind of have it all. They're just a super intelligent, prehistoric looking lizard that's in a good size package. That's why I think they're my favorite. Even though I hate to choose a favorite, if I had to choose one anole species I could only work with from here on out, that would be the one.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, they're super.
At least you have good reasons to call them the favorite, though, right?
Yeah.
That's what matters the most.
Yeah.
Now, are some of them like difficult to breed, or do they all seem like readily, ready to breed?
So the Caribbean species, all I've generally figured out, they're pretty easy to breed. But then when you come to, I mean, there's lots of species in the Caribbean, but you also have to think anoles range all the way from central to south all the way through South America. So there's hundreds of species in the Amazon and those areas that we don't know a lot about, because the Caribbean species we seem to have a lot more of in captivity, but the mainland species, they call them, there's not very much info. So when it comes to breeding those, it's a lot more difficult, because the Caribbean species have kind of a constant temperature, constant humidity. It's not really changing a lot. Whereas the mainland species, there's a lot of changes in seasons. They have a lot of different food than we can provide for them here in captivity. So breeding them is a lot harder. I've worked with a couple of mainland species, and honestly, the issue is getting good founder stock, because a lot of the time I basically always have to get the mainland ones, imported from wild caught species from their countries of origin. Usually it's like Peru. And by the time I get them, they don't do well, and it's hard to get them going. And even if I do get them going, after like maybe 6 months, all of a sudden for no reason, I'll lose one, and then I'll lose another. So I've done research. I've talked to other people in Europe who have tried to breed them. And it seems that there's some studies that have been done that in captivity, we don't have the right insects for them to feed them, because our insect, like crickets and roaches and all the stuff we feed them, is a little too high in fat for them. So naturally they're not eating that, and their livers can't handle it. So that seems to be an issue, but I have had success with one mainland species. It's called the yellow-tongued anole, or Anolis cypheus, and that's a super cool species. I've posted on my Instagram. I can just pull her out right now. I have the female, and it just looks like a mini dinosaur. I had got one egg from her. Unfortunately, like I said, when I got the male originally, he came in a pretty rough shape, but I had him just long enough for him to do the job, and I have one egg, and they retain sperm, so she could lay another. Let me grab her right now. She's super.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Heck yeah, that'd be awesome.
So this is Anolis cypheus, and that is from Peru, and that's
a Peruvian anole.
Yes,
mainland.
Yes, mainland anole from Peru. So super cool lizard, and you can see she's very mellow. And they look kind of like leaf litter because they are going to live near the forest floor, so they want to blend in. Kind of almost reminds you of like a satanic leaf-tail gecko or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, super beautiful. So I'm excited. I have an egg from her. I got it maybe 2 weeks ago, and it looks great. So that'll be real. Awesome. It'll be the first captive bred one ever, I think. So that'll be really cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
See, yeah, there's nothing like world's firsts of a new species. Nothing.
Yeah.
And to be talking about that in 2022 is just phenomenal,
Yeah.
Great.
And there's still, I mean, not in the Caribbean, but in like Amazon, there's still new species of anoles being discovered. So it's pretty incredible that, such a, you would think common lizard, there's stuff that we still don't even know exists. It's really exciting to me to be able to work with stuff that no one else really has.
Now, there's more species of anoles, or anoles is like the biggest species of like vertebrates, right?
Yeah, it's the biggest genus of vertebrates. Out of birds, fish, reptiles, mammals, Anolis has the largest amount of species out of everything. And not that's just species. Then honestly, each species has multiple subspecies. And then within the subspecies, there's localities. So it gets absolutely insane. Like this wall behind me is only the species of Anolis roquette, which is called the Martinique anole, comes from the island of Martinique. There are 6 subspecies, and within each subspecies, there's like dozens of localities that all look different, and you can actually tell apart.
Wow.
It's just mind-blowing because like on that island, there's small pockets of like different types of trees, different towns, different this, different that. And there'll be subspecies on sections of the islands, but then each town or each, farmland has a totally different locality that looks different than the one 3 miles down the road.
Wow.
And the fact that they lay an egg a week and they're sexually mature in less than a year leads to them being able to, being very highly diverse in the way they look. So that's also just so exciting for me because it's like natural morphs. I don't need to create combos. There are just so many different options that I couldn't even imagine creating something new because it's all just so cool.
It's all already there.
Yeah.
It's not like, I mean, ball pythons started with finding crazy individuals in the wild, and it's the same principle. There just happens to be a lot more of them.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that you are also, a photographer.
Yeah.
Right? I saw you went to school for that, or
I went to that wasn't my main thing in school, but I did get a minor in documentary film. Okay. But prior to that, I've always been like a photographer. I shouldn't even put quotes because that's what I used to do. I used to do like wedding photos, senior portraits,
nice,
car photos, real estate photos. So that's what I used to do. And then I also do, I did my full-time thing before this became the full-time thing. I used to do a lot of work for social media stuff, like marketing and stuff. And I still do some of that on the side. Just sometimes the Knowles don't always pay the bills. So, you gotta
do what you know how to do. Yeah. I'm a mechanic on the side. Trust me.
If I could stick to lizard, maybe one day I'm really hopeful that this will become the bread and butter, but until then, still got to work other things in to make it all work because like I said, anoles are a new thing. And even though people think they're cool, it's not selling thousands of them a month.
Give it 5 years. I guarantee.
Yeah.
You're gonna figure out the what's the red eye crocodile skink of the anole world. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden everybody's gonna want it. Don't worry about it. Just be patient.
Yeah. Honestly, one that surprised me a lot that people are go crazy. I can't even produce enough are they're brown anoles, but they've been line bred by my friend. His name is James Lindros. He also breeds a lot of the micro geckos.
Okay.
They're brown anoles, but they've been line bred to be bright red, like literally as red as that little lizard with the headphones.
Okay.
They're crazy. So people love those things because I think people like when they know what something is and it doesn't look like how it's like. People like a crazy ball python morph because you know what a normal is. But if you go look in Angolan python, people kind of don't care. So same thing with the retinol. People know it's supposed to be a brown anole, but it's so bright red that people are obsessed with it. So that's one thing that has kind of blown me away that, oh my gosh, I got to hold back a ton of these because I've probably produced 100 this year and I have like 5 babies right now that I'm just growing up because I can't keep them. It's crazy.
But that's good. I mean, it's letting you do the work that you need to do also, though. You know, I mean, sure. Not selling it lightly with the whole world's first of a species in captivity thing. You know, that's again another part of where this hobby was originally designed to fill a niche. You know, a lot of species of lizards were bred by just regular people. Exactly. First in captivity. It wasn't zoos. It wasn't big organizations doing it. There wasn't a huge drive for herpetoculture back in the day. And a lot of these people in the 70s, 80s, 90s were really, I'm gonna keep 25 tegus, for example. I'm gonna keep 25 of this or 25 of that, and we're gonna be the world's first producing them because I think they're gonna make a great pet. And you're on the right track. You'll get there. Well, you'll find something. You'll find something that'll be you and you alone, and nobody else will even have it, I'm sure.
Yeah. No, that's how a lot of this is. I'm definitely a tough road there, but it's proven to be worth it so far, and it proves it every day. So it's good. It's been a cool ride.
Good. The passion's
so
there. That's for sure.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, this is all in California, yeah.
Do you aside from what is going on behind you, do you ever get a chance? I know you're so busy, but you ever get a chance to like get out and like do some herping out in your area?
Oh yeah, no, I literally made the username Herp Time on YouTube first when I was, I think, 13 or 12, and that's all I was. It's called Herp Time because that's all I would make herping videos. A lot of them I stupidly deleted them when I was like still in middle school because I was embarrassed of them. But I didn't delete them because they were so funny because it was just me and my friends herping. But no, herping, I love herping. I love being able to go out and see stuff. California, honestly, has some of the coolest herping around. We have such different diverse areas where one minute within like an hour, you can be in the desert or you can be on the coast and you can find totally different stuff. So California is cool. I actually went to about 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, I went to Ecuador just for herping. Like it was a 10-day herping trip with 2 friends. And that was the first time I went on a dedicated herping trip. And that was super awesome. I had a great time and saw some really cool anoles that aren't in captivity and can't bring anything back from Ecuador. But it was still amazing to see stuff that, you know, there's no other way I would have ever been able to see it. But go find them in the wild. It was super fun. Super cool.
Yeah, that's like a huge goal of mine too, is to be able to get to a point where I can just do that. Like I want to, you know, plan for that and try it out, you know, head to another area of the world, you know?
Yeah. Well, honestly, with the herping tours in like South America are not that expensive. It was like a little more than besides the plane ticket, everything else with food included cost maybe like $150 a day. So, I mean, it was 10 days of travel plus there. So we were there for like 8 days. So it really, it was much cheaper than say going to Hawaii or something, because granted, we didn't stay in like 5-star resorts. It was nearly camping, but it was still, it's an experience that I definitely will never forget. I have photos from there that I took of animals that I'll never forget, photos of me doing stuff, finding animals that I'll never forget. So it's definitely worth doing.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's awesome to me that you sound just as passionate about that as you do breeding all these, species of anoles, which like to me that lets me know that you're doing it literally because of the love for it. Like,
Oh yeah, no, I've loved reptiles forever, and it's just kind of, I don't know what's wrong with me, but it's just who I am.
nothing,
Yeah.
nothing. I'm going to interrupt you right there. Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad nothing's wrong with me, but it's just been my passion since I was literally as long as I can remember. My mom probably accidentally turned on the Crocodile Hunter, and that was kind of the nail in the coffin. So I've been herping forever. I've been trying to breed. I mean, the first lizard I bred was a green anole when I was like 9 years old. I have a picture kind of way back on my Instagram. When my parents, I really appreciate them for. My dad doesn't like reptiles at all. My mom doesn't hate them, but it's not like it was her thing. But they both always supported me, even though at times it didn't make sense. They I really appreciate them being able to kind of let me do what I wanted to do, even if at the time it made no sense. It's kind of all, even now maybe it doesn't make sense, but it's all panning out, and I think they see that it's something I love, and it's working out. So I'm really appreciative to have, not only them supporting me, but a lot of like even people I never met, just being able to watch people like not necessarily myself, but other people sharing online, them doing stuff, because it's encouraging to like, oh, okay, well, if he can do it, why can't I? I used to watch, for example, I'm only 24. So when I was in middle school, I was watching Brian Barczyk, and that's the notable person that I remember. I learned how to breed leopard geckos from his videos, and then I started breeding leopard geckos when I was in middle school and high school. So stuff like that, that's kind of also what pushes me to share on social media, because honestly, if I could have it my way, I would never show my face. I would never talk. I would literally love to just be locked in this room with my lizards and never have to talk to anyone about buying a baby or anything. I don't have that choice. So I've been forced to kind of do it, and I've decided, I shouldn't be that selfish where I don't share what I'm doing. I share it so that, it builds some hype so people want to buy the stuff, but also so that the younger generation, or even I was talking to a gentleman who's literally a science teacher. He has kids and everything, and he's like, your page inspired me to get into this and start teaching my students about this, and we're going to get some anoles for the classroom. And that's just literally why I do it, so that other people, no matter the age, can have something that they enjoy and open up a whole new world to people that it's literally right in front of everyone.
Yep.
Whether it's anoles, ball pythons and bearded dragons, no bashing on them. They're still great animals. Mm-hmm. But whatever it is, I just want people to know that it's possible no matter what.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to have you on too, is because, I had some anoles when I was little, probably 12, 11, 10,
right.
That age range. But it was when I discovered your page where I was like, oh my God, like I had no idea
that
all of these existed. And the way that you showed them was like so beautiful. And I've been following you for, I don't know how long it's been, but I've been following you for a while.
Yeah.
And I've never gotten tired of anything that you post on Instagram, because it's so beautiful and there's so many differences in the species, and it's like you have a room behind you like full of anoles, but somebody who didn't know but it was walking in and was looking, it wouldn't be like saying, oh, there's one, it'd be like, wow, look at that, wow, look at that, wow, look at that. And I love that. That's so awesome to me.
Yeah. Well, that's my goal. What I try to do on social media is show each and every species, subspecies, locality is so individual and different. Like I can stare at each one of these for an hour and not get tired of looking at one and then go to the next one and it's a totally different lizard. And I'm still just blown away how, sorry, my stupid computer's connected to my phone.
You're
I just
okay.
blown away that such beautiful animals that no one else really has. And you Google photos. Sometimes some of these species I Google photos and there's 3 photos and then no more. And it's like, it's insane that I'm looking at it. I see it every day and I've hatched
Out of any curiosity, out of all curiosity, are there any species that you have right now that you Google photos and they're only yours?
No, I don't think so.
No.
I
was just very curious because
that would be cool.
I mean, there's, you know, Google's huge, right?
Yeah.
20 years ago when all these guys were pioneering this entire hobby, they didn't have that option, right? They didn't have that opportunity. But I was very curious to see if you had a species where it was like, oh yeah, I took that picture.
No, there's not. I mean, that would be insane if there was, but there's like the one I'm talking about that there's only like 3 pictures on Google and they were literally posted like to be on Flickr, which that's why it's found on Google like a few years ago. So until then, I'm sure there were no photos on Google. It's called Anolis eladioi. It's it has a green body and then 3 really bright orange spots from the head down through the neck. And they're from like Dominican Republic. They're kind of more of a cloud forest species, but like I said, there's literally 3 photos and I produced them. And it's just crazy to me that something so unknown to the outside world is sitting, you know, a few feet behind me and I get to see it every day. So that's also a really cool driving factor. Like I get biologists messaging me on Instagram, like, hey, I just found your page. Amazing page. I can't believe you have this species that's been a dream species for me to see in the wild. And I'm like, yeah, it's super awesome. And then they'll send me pictures of stuff they're doing research on. I'm like, whoa, I didn't even know that species exists. And they're like, yeah, it's here. Like they'll send me coordinates of where to go see them. I'm
That's
like,
awesome.
I can't go to Ecuador again this week, but thanks for showing me. And it's cool to be able to like, because a lot of times like biologists and herpetologists, people that have degrees, like kind of get weird about people breeding stuff, I've found. But it's really cool when there's people who study the science that are also like open to people who have captive breeding stuff, and they find it just as cool because they've appreciated it in the wild and they're thankful that someone can, you know, bring it to someone else's home rather than, you know, if you don't have a certain degree and you're not have all these grants, there's no way you're going to go spend all this time in the jungle finding these species. Right. So it's cool when the scientific community also appreciates what's going on in the herpetoculture community.
And that's exactly what I was saying about like the way you do it, like bridging the gap, where if I'm not a scientist, so I don't know how they feel, but I assume that when they see what you're doing and how in the way that you're doing it, it's a lot easier to digest than what they may be used to from other, you know, quote unquote, like breeders.
Yeah.
Because it's a totally different approach.
Totally. I think that image thing for the reptile hobby needs to, I don't know how to do it because there's no right way, because realistically, someone can't make a living because a lot of people make a living on snakes or this or that. You can't do it if you keep each ball python in a 4x2x2. It's not, no way you can make money. But at the same time, there has to be a way where we can make it more appealing to the eye for the outsider, because without that, then there's no way to make it seem ethical or logical what we're doing. Because though we know that maybe a ball python doesn't mind being in a rack, they like a small space that's dark. It's hard for the average person to understand that. So basically just reiterating what we've all said.
It goes to show you, you know, I do a lot of public displays, and one of the species that obviously we bring here in the Northeast in summer is giant spurred tortoises from Africa, 3rd largest species in the world. And we constantly get somebody telling us that, you know, you need to have a water bowl for your tortoise.
Right.
Well, no, I don't. They don't drink water. They don't care that there's a water bowl. They have zero understanding of standing water. It really is, they just ate a watermelon. I mean, if you were here this morning before we opened the doors, I wish you could have seen this thing pee. He's hydrated. I promise everything's fine. But it's a very big disconnect between the general public and reptile keepers. And if the only ones that are getting the publicities out there are the ones that aren't necessarily the best choice for the torch holder, it becomes a negative situation. Whereas if we had 100 of you talking about, even if it's not just anoles, but talking about all species in the same way that you bring forth that information, it would be a very different conversation. And a lot of those public entities like Fish and Wildlife, specifically out of Florida, wouldn't be able to make up their own science or make up their own understanding of what could be the future and use that negative or not real factual information to defend that position that they have. While there's a horrible situation going on in Florida, no matter what side of any of the conversation you're on, certain things should not be there, and they are. End of the story. When it comes to reptile keeping, period, there's a really big gap between the commercial breeder and the scientist. And you, like Greg said, are doing a really good job at trying to push that. And a lot of people do what you do and did, especially in the 2000s and the early 2010, late 90s, early 2000s. A lot of people did what you do, and it was just not publicized. Right. And the people who were born out of that hobby that were publicizing it were maybe not necessarily the people that were supposed to hold the torch. Right. And it's not a negative situation. I don't think breeding snakes for the most part in captivity is a bad thing. But at the same point in time, when you have 100 venomous snakes in New York, for example, where it's already been illegal and they're seized, they can use something like that to demonize the rest of the hobby, and it becomes a really big problem. It becomes a really big issue of what's public, what's not public, what's real, what's not real. And then you have fake news, you add all this other crazy stuff in. We get news reports here in New York State about alligators being loose everywhere all the time. There were 4 last year that were caught by DEC. What they're not including in these news publications is that A, it was somebody's pet, clearly, because it was well taken care of and healthy. And B, it's 3 feet long.
Yeah.
It's not 12 feet. No one's going to get hurt. This is not, there's 150 licensed keepers, I'm sure, or more in New York State, not counting zoological facilities, that have the license to do this. It's not the one guy that let his 3-foot gator go that he got in Pennsylvania where it's legal and brought here. This is a situation where you're taking all of these rights away from people that aren't necessarily the ones doing the problem. But if more people can publicize the positive spin on this hobby, and it's not just it's not just people who can't articulate the reasons they're keeping them, and it doesn't come back to money, it's really, really detrimental to the hobby that kind of a switch publicly happens. And it is happening. It's absolutely fantastic. A lot of the people who are coming out now that gained popularity through COVID and even just before are really pushing to create that systemic separation between, well, no, hold on a minute. These guys over here, they're not with us. We don't know what they're doing. They're doing our hobby is dedicated and founded in the scientific principles to be able to keep species and also possibly make some money and provide some really awesome pets for people in the future. But we don't really care about the pet side of it. We really care about the interaction, the longevity of the species, the understanding of the species, and so on and so forth. It's just a remarkable scenario to see at 20. What you said, you were 24, 25? I forgot. I'm sorry. 24. It's remarkable to see a 24-year-old go into it with a scientific mind. And I'm sure you have a list of species that you want to keep that's longer than what I've ever kept in my life, I'm sure. But do you see yourself ever possibly moving out of anoles and into something else? Maybe not completely, obviously, but I just meant in generalized practice. Like,
Well, I mean, all lizards, all reptiles interest me. So anoles are definitely something I will always have, but it doesn't have to stay that way. I mean, I definitely want to establish a lot of these species so that they're never lost from the hobby. Because I've talked to a lot of people who've had anoles before me, and they're like, and they know I know. I mean, I've found a lot of people who I can get these from out of the country and stuff like that. So they're always asking me, "Hey, can you find this? Can you find that? I used to have this 20 years ago. I used to have this 35 years ago. You think you can find them?" I'm like, I mean, yeah, I'll ask around, but I've never even heard of it, so I don't know if I'll find it, and I never do. The people ask, "Oh, I used to breed those 20 years ago, but no one was interested in them, so I sold my pair." So it's like I really want to make sure stuff like this is around in the long term, because
Good.
I don't want that to happen to some of these species, because once they're gone and they're from a country that you can't export from, then they're kind of gone forever.
Yep.
So, and then who knows in the wild if one of these subspecies or localities is from one pocket, and for example, a hurricane hits that island,
Yep.
gone forever. So it's that's I definitely want to keep doing the anole thing, but there's so many other reptiles that I would love to be able to produce and breed and work with. And um, the anoles just work for me because they take up little space and I can have more in a larger space, which, hey, to admit, I'm kind of an organized hoarder. I just want,
we all are. It's okay.
yeah, I want to, I want to make it look like I'm not hoarding, but I want as many as I can that I can logically take care of. Because I just find it so amazing that there's so many, and it's just like addicting to want to have more. So that's why I like the anoles. There's so many. So, but I have like Chinese crocodile lizards are one of my favorites. Like I said, I like crocodiles and stuff like that. So the Chinese crocodile lizard is one of my favorite species ever. And that was kind of a hard decision for me because I at one point literally had 12 of them. And I realized, okay, well, right now this might not make sense for me to do because I need to cool them down. I need to get them all the right stuff. Financially, it might not make sense if I keep doing this. So I made the decision I didn't just, post them on Morph Market and sell them to the highest bidder. No, I took major losses on them, and I didn't even get money for them. I traded for other stuff to friends that already have some, that I sent them to two individuals that are already working with them and breeding them, because that's one species. There's so few left in the wild. They're a critically endangered CITES 1 species. I would much rather than go to knowledgeable people that are going to be able to have success with them. And then one day down the line, when I'm more prepared to give the correct enclosure, cooling temperatures, I can breed them myself. So that's kind of where I see it, where not only do I want to have cool stuff, but if I can't make it happy enough to reproduce, then I probably shouldn't have it.
Right.
Because if it's something so rare like that, I shouldn't be trying, and I can't produce it. Why do I have it? I'm going to give it to someone who is literally already set up a whole cold room for them, has everything dialed in, so that now that they have a dozen of them to themselves, they can really like I'm focusing on anoles, they can focus on that.
Yep.
I found that I do better when I have stuff that all gets the same care and same needs. In that way, I've said this on other podcasts. It's like, I don't want to go to the grocery store to go get lettuce for the iguana, mix the crusty gecko food, get the crickets for the anoles, get the, chicken or rodents for the
monitor. I
monitor.
know. It's a pain.
So, yeah, I mean, you probably have a whole menagerie of different, rescue
it's
animals.
A pain to prepare 17 different things weekly,
Yeah, so it's much different when this room is air controlled, the lighting's the same, the misting's the same, the feeding schedule's the same.
Yep.
Versus trying to put my hand in everything, even though I want to, it might not be the most logical thing to do. So
right.
I will circling back, I will for sure do other stuff besides anoles, but since it's generally just me right now, this is the easiest thing for me to do on a larger scale that I feel passionate about at the same time.
While being available to be able to make outside money should the situation call for it. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm sorry,
Um,
Greg. I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, that's okay. We started at the same time.
Yep.
No, I just had like a kind of like a sidebar question.
Yeah,
Because I know, you have mostly small species. Do you have any uh emerald tree skinks?
I don't. That's honestly one species, excuse me, that I really like a lot that I don't have. I don't know why I don't. I know I did a project with ZoomEd. I honestly haven't seen very many around, but I did a project where ZoomEd where they gave me some big paludariums to set up, and I went to their facility and they breed them there, and I saw them. I'm like, man, I've seen these so many times, and I don't know why I don't have them because they're really they fit like almost the same niche as what I'm doing now, and they're a really cool species. So I don't have them, but I would not mind getting some.
Yeah, I had somebody order me some a while back, and something happened, and I actually wasn't able to get them.
Okay.
But they've been on my mind, and I watch videos on them and stuff, and they sort of fit,
Yeah.
a little bit into what you have going there. So I was just curious about it.
They're also a cool species because they are highly intelligent as well. And they're
Yeah,
so that's another cool one that see, that's the thing, it's never ending.
Yeah.
I need
There's
it
always another animal.
big and fit more animals, but then it's crazy. So have to be selective. But that's definitely a cool species that I wouldn't mind working with.
Remarkable stuff.
so what are your goals as far as, I know obviously you want to get to a point where this is, you don't need to pick up side jobs,
Right.
you know, but like, that where you are now, that building, like, what is your, where do you see yourself, when it comes to breeding and
That's a great question. I really want to obviously make this sustainable long term, and I want to I don't know. I just want it to I not like I plan to be a millionaire or become famous from breeding, tiny lizards. That's definitely not the goal. The goal is just to be able to live comfortably and enjoy. Like I said, if I didn't have to, I wouldn't post on social media. I would not even sell a baby. When this was a hobby, I rarely ever sold any because I didn't want to. I don't have a need. I love my lizards. So I'm happy to sell them to people who enjoy them as well. But at the same time, it's like, that's not what's driving me. What's driving me is, be able to live comfortably and not worry about, how I'm going to pay the rent or the gas or the food and, continue what I'm doing. So long term, I would love to open some type of like, not necessarily a zoo, but some type of exhibit where you can see these, because right now it's just me realistically, and I have everything breeding and I want people walking through and scaring stuff, but I would love to be able to open something or help facilitate opening something at a different zoo or something where I can help build displays with all these cool lesser known species that deserve just as much as attention as everything else. That's really what drives me is like being able to share this stuff with others. And that's what the social media has been able to do. Even though, like I said, if I had it my way, I would not be, publicly on social media. But I just want to share it with other people and have other people excited so that I don't feel like such the weirdo I am. I want everyone to be excited so that it all makes sense. But yeah, whether, like I said, making displays and showing them off to other people is really what I would like to do. And I'm kind of building an army. Certain species I've held back like a bunch so that I can have a display of, 20 lizards in one giant enclosure. So I don't know. I really don't have the idea set. I still have a lot of time to figure that out. But, just taking it kind of day by day at this point.
yeah.
Remarkable. It sounds like you definitely have a direction though. That's most of the situation right there. It doesn't sound chaotic. It sounds very directed. You know where you're headed, how you get there may be a little different, but where you're going.
Exactly.
It's good
because
stuff.
I always wanted to, before I got a business degree in school and then the minor in documentary film. I always wanted to be like a marine biologist or a straight up biologist. And then my long story short, my family kind of discouraged me, and I'm like, yeah, how am I going to make money doing work in a lab or something? So that's why I went the other route. But my heart's always been in the science of it and learning about it and sharing information with others. So even though that's not the direct path I took in school, I feel I've maybe even better than I could have as a biologist. I've kind of been effective in sharing information with others, even though some science people, I'm definitely no herpetologist, right? But I like to think that I am able to share information with people that otherwise wouldn't have been shared. So that's exciting to me.
Yeah. I mean, you're definitely well on your way of doing something that not many other people are doing. And that's always a great step in the right direction, especially for the right reasons. Of course, you know, that's the predominant thing that screams out of your room behind you, is that this is a guy that's not like, I don't want to make a shit ton of money. I just want to make sure that I have these animals and the hobby doesn't lose these animals. And that's a lot of the cries from a lot of the older keepers are triumphantly sounding that particular alarm. Exactly what you said a minute ago with, you know, countries are closing their borders. They're not exporting as often anymore. And some, you know, very few legal people were doing it out of a bunch of countries to begin with. And it's one of those situations that you're bringing herpetoculture into the forefront of the hobby, which is great. I don't even know, words can't describe how great that is. I really can't say it enough. It's a step in the right direction to see that happening in 2022 as well. You know, the morph phase or craze is one of those situations that is a double-edged sword, no matter how you look at it, no matter what side of the fence you're on it. But what you're doing does not align directly with that. What you're doing is the birth of the hobby, the creation of these animals for longevity and captivity is a real you are a scientist for a lack of a better use of words. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't know why I'm stuttering so much. I'm sorry. I had a very long day today and I sound like a complete crazy person. I literally had to talk to like 50 people today about, you know, what animal would suit their home the best. So talking, I'm really not on talking at this moment. That's why I was letting Greg do all of it.
Because I'm usually not on talking.
Yeah, I was very
talking now, so it kind of works
lost.
out.
But yeah, I mean, what you're doing is really important work. Regardless, I mean, I'm glad to see that you're so super passionate about anoles in general. But you know, the reason you're passionate is super awesome. Also, you know, it's to keep them forever, to have them to be able to further that in the hobby. And there's a lot of species that were once in this hobby and are not going to be. And I don't mean just anoles. I just mean in general. There's a lot of bigger lizard species that you could get a long time ago. You can't get them anymore. The Chilean dwarf tegu is one of the species that comes to mind in my lifetime that you used to be able to import them all the time. Nobody could figure out the trick to breed them. Nobody could really even figure out the trick to keeping them alive. And here we are. Yeah. They closed their borders. We don't have them. You know,
another example, the like tokay geckos, skunk geckos, Chinese water dragons, they're all going CITES 1 in the end of the year. So
and that's
whatever you get PetSmart, it's gone. Chinese water dragons, whoever, I mean, someone's got to start breeding them, because they're imported and sold for $15, but in 5 years when they're not around, really, it's a bright green dragon looking lizard. How it doesn't get cooler than that. They will be worth a lot of money. So it's like, that's it. You never know what happens. So that's one thing that blew my mind when I saw that Chinese water dragons were going CITES 1. I was like, whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that the Australian water dragon was so stopped the export such a long time ago, and there's so very few people working with them. It's a very exact example, and there's even less people working with the Chinese water dragon than there are the Australians. And it's really we have the power to save species from extinction, maybe, but we have the power to save species from being completely hidden from the keeper. That's the important part of this. You know, when you go to an expo, when you go to a show, it used to be snakes and lizards from all over the world. If they're all, you know, banned and those countries no longer export, what are we going to have there? What's going to be there?
Pythons and leopard geckos.
Is there going to be a diversity market to keep enough people invested, understood, and really trying to save these creatures, keep these creatures, I should say, not save, in captivity? When you walk through a show, every one of those little kids is a future herpetologist or a future, I don't want to say croc hunter because that man was probably one in a 9 billion. But, you know, he's a future Jeff Corwin or a future, she's a future, you know, Jane Goodall for reptiles. Like, these people, if you can't experience it, then it becomes a big issue, right? That's, I do a lot of school shows. I do a lot of shows like that. And I mean, I can remember, I'm 40 years old. I can remember the guy letting me hold a 18-foot reticulated python's head when I was in 6th grade. And I can remember the owl flying over my head in the same auditorium, in that same demonstration. And I mean, I was 11, and I'm now 40, and I can go to that memory in my head, and I know it, and I know what it sounded like. I could see the look on the guy's face when he crinkled the paper and the owl turned his head, because he was talking about us learning how owls can hear in 3D, right? That's the importance of animals in person, regardless of whether it's a 3 or 4 inch anole, or it's a 16-foot crocodile, or if it's a 2-foot snake or a 10-foot snake. It doesn't matter what it is. Animals and interactions are extremely important. And I'm 40 years old. I've been working with reptiles for 25 years. I had absolutely no idea there were that many species of anoles.
Yeah.
Learn something new every day, and you really enjoy your life. You know, It's great. I love what you do. I'm very, very in awe.
Well, I appreciate you guys.
I'm really looking forward to seeing, you know, what happens for you in the future. And luckily, you know, for better or worse, because of social media, you know, as long as, you know, everyone stays, you know, healthy and happy and committed, you know, we'll be able to see what's going to happen with you, you know.
Well, hopefully all goes well and somewhat on my foggy plan, but it hopefully everything goes well, and I don't plan on stopping. So unless something crazy happens, I won't. And I appreciate you guys having me on and reaching out to me, and thank you for the kind words. And it's also always nice to hear some encouragement from people who have been in it longer than me. So I appreciate you guys, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. It was our pleasure.
Anytime. I hope you guys have success with this, and then I'd love to come back one day.
Absolutely. Sounds great.
And recap what we talked about and see where I'm at and see where you guys are at and what's going on.
Sounds great to me.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm totally down for that. You're more than welcome.
Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, Armen, we'll talk to you. All right.
Yeah. We'll keep in touch.